Libra, you know exactly who this is about. The moment you read those words, before you had time to think or deliberate or apply the careful Libra filter that usually mediates between your first instinct and your expressed response, before any of that, a face appeared. A name surfaced. A specific, particular, unmistakable presence moved through your awareness with the quiet certainty of something that has been waiting for permission to be acknowledged. That person, the one who just came to mind. This is for them and for you and for everything that exists in the complicated, unresolved, still carrying weight space between where you are and where they are, and where the two of you left things the last time you were in real contact with each other. And I want to start by saying something that I think you need to hear before anything else, before the details and the revelations and the layers of what is actually happening on their side of the silence. I want to start by acknowledging what it cost you to stop speaking to this person, because it was not nothing. It was not the clean, uncomplicated, I have simply moved on experience that it may have appeared to be from the outside. For Libra, for someone whose entire nature is oriented toward connection, toward the maintenance of relationship, toward the belief that most things can be worked through if approached with enough grace and enough patience and enough genuine willingness to understand, choosing silence with someone who matters is one of the most quietly agonizing decisions you can make. You did not arrive at it lightly. Whatever the circumstances were, whatever the specific sequence of events, or the particular wound, or the gradual accumulation of smaller things that eventually became too heavy to continue carrying, you gave this connection every reasonable opportunity before you let it go quiet. You are not someone who withdraws easily or impulsively or without genuine consideration of every alternative. The silence, when it finally came after everything else had been tried, after patience had been extended to its natural limit, after the part of you that wanted things to be different had finally, exhaustedly accepted that wanting something to be different is not the same as being able to make it different. And so you went quiet, gracefully, as you do everything, without a dramatic announcement or a list of grievances or the kind of conclusion that gives both parties something to point to and say, there, that is where it ended. It simply became silence. And silence, for Libra, is the most powerful and the most painful statement you know how to make. They felt it. This is important. They felt the specific weight of your silence in a way that was different from the ordinary absence of contact, because your presence in their life had a quality, a warmth, an attentiveness, a specific and consistent way of showing up that made your absence unmistakably different from simply not being in touch. The silence did not feel like nothing. It felt like the withdrawal of something that had been substantial, something they had learned without consciously deciding to learn it, to count on, something that, when it stopped, left a shape in their daily experience, a gap that had your outline, that could not be filled by rearranging the other elements of their life, because none of the other elements had the same shape as you. They had been living inside that gap, and it has been changing them in ways they did not anticipate. Here is what is happening with this person right now. In the interior world they carry behind whatever face they present to their daily life, there is a reckoning underway. Not a dramatic one. It does not announce itself with the urgency of a crisis or the clarity of a sudden revelation. It is the slow, steady, increasingly undeniable kind of reckoning that arrives when you have tried for long enough and in enough different ways to outrun the truth and have finally run out of roads. The truth they are running out of roads to outrun is this: they handled you poorly. Whatever the specific content of what happened between you, whatever their role in the sequence of events that led to the silence they know, in the honest part of themselves that they do not always choose to consult but cannot ultimately silence, that they did not show up for you the way you deserve to be shown up for. That knowledge has been living in them quietly, in the moments between other things, in the sleepless stretches of night when the mind revisits what the daylight makes easier to avoid. In the flash of memory that surfaces without invitation, something you said, something you did, the specific quality of who you were in their life that arrives and then sits there, requiring a response from them that they do not always know how to give. The response it is requiring, increasingly and with growing insistence, is honesty, the admission that something was lost that did not need to be lost, that choices were made and responses were given, and a quality of care was either withheld or unskillfully offered. And the result was the silence that they are now living inside of and finding considerably less comfortable than they expected. They thought the silence would feel like relief. Sometimes, at the beginning of a separation from someone with whom things became complicated, there is a kind of relief in the absence of friction, the simplicity of not having to navigate a dynamic that had become difficult. If they felt that, it was brief, very brief. And what replaced it was not the comfortable neutrality of someone who has moved past something that was no longer serving them. What replaced it was the gradual, persistent, emotionally significant awareness of what they actually had when they had you, what your presence meant, what the quality of your attention, your care, your distinctive way of being in relationship brought to their experience of their own life, and what its absence reveals about the landscape of everything else. The landscape of everything else, it turns out, is missing something it cannot source from anywhere other than you. Now, I want to speak to you directly about something, Libra, because this is the part where your nature is both your greatest gift and the thing that most requires watching right now. You are compassionate, genuinely, deeply, constitutionally compassionate in a way that makes it almost reflexively easy for you to find the most generous interpretation of another person's behavior, to locate the fear behind the wound they inflicted, the limitation behind the failure, the human imperfection behind the thing that hurt you, and that compassion is real and it is beautiful, and it is one of the things that makes you extraordinary to be loved by. But in this situation, in this particular moment of receiving information about someone whose actions led to a silence that cost you something real, that compassion needs a companion. It needs to be accompanied by the equally real, equally valid, equally Libra capacity for clarity, the ability to see not just what this person is going through now, not just what their regret or their reckoning means about their interior growth, but also what happened, what actually happened, what you carried, what it cost, what the silence, which felt from your side like the only dignified response available to you, actually required of someone who would rather have stayed in connection. Hold both things, the compassion and the clarity, not as opposing forces, but as the two sides of the fully informed Libra response, the response that can see this person's humanity and growth while also holding firm in the knowledge of your own experience and your own needs. because the conversation that is eventually going to need to happen, the one that the silence has been standing in for inadequately this entire time, requires both of those things from you. Your warmth and your honesty, your openness and your boundaries, your genuine capacity for forgiveness, and your equally genuine clarity about what forgiveness does and does not mean in practice. Forgiveness for Libra is not the same as returning to the exact configuration that existed before things went wrong. This is a distinction worth sitting with, because your sign sometimes conflates the two. Sometimes in the generosity of actually forgiving someone extends that forgiveness all the way into a restoration of access that has not yet been earned. Forgiveness is internal. It is the releasing of the weight of resentment from your own body, the choosing of your own peace over the ongoing cost of carrying anger. It is something you do for yourself. It has nothing necessarily to do with what you offer externally. And what you offer externally, how much of yourself, in what form, under what conditions, is a separate decision that belongs entirely to you and should be made from the place of full self-knowledge rather than from the momentum of an emotional reunion. Take your time with the external decision. Let the internal work of releasing the weight happen at its own pace in your own private interior without allowing it to be rushed by anyone else's timeline or need. And when the question of what to do with this person, this silence, this unresolved thing between you, eventually presents itself as something you must actively decide rather than simply continue to make that decision from the fullest, clearest, most self-knowing version of yourself you can access. Because something is going to require a decision. Something is moving in this dynamic that is going to shift it out of the suspended state of unanswered silence and into the more active terrain of actual choice. This person sitting with their reckoning, living inside the gap that has your outline, is approaching the point where continued inaction feels worse than the risk of action. Where the discomfort of reaching out, with all its attendant vulnerability and uncertainty about how they will be received, begins to feel smaller than the discomfort of never knowing what would have happened if they had. They are going to reach. The form of it may be small, a message that understates what it is actually trying to say, a gesture that is really a question, a careful and slightly tentative opening that is looking to see whether there is still a space on the other side of the silence where you are willing to receive them. It will not arrive with the full force of everything they have been sitting with, because that kind of full force is rarely how people actually initiate these conversations. It will arrive as a beginning, an opening, an inch of door, offered to see whether you will open it wider or close it fully. What you do with that inch is entirely yours. And here is what I want to offer you as you hold that choice in advance of it arriving, not as direction, because this is your life and your heart and the direction belongs to you, but as perspective. The perspective of someone who can see what exists between you with the clarity that the close proximity of your own feelings sometimes makes difficult. What exists between you and this person is real. The connection, whatever its complications, whatever the specific nature of what went wrong, carries a weight and a substance and a quality of genuine meaning that does not simply evaporate because things became difficult. It is still there. It has been there throughout the silence. It is the reason the silence felt significant on both sides. You do not mourn the absence of something that was not real. You do not carry the shape of something that never mattered. What you have been carrying and what they have been carrying is the weight of something real that was not handled with the care it deserved. That real thing can be handled better, not by erasing what happened or pretending the silence did not occur or bypassing the honest conversation that would allow both of you to actually understand each other rather than simply resuming contact, but by bringing to it something that neither of you had in sufficient measure the first time: the willingness to be fully honest about your experience, to listen with genuine openness to theirs, and to decide together with full information and full presence what this connection is meant to be in this new chapter. It may be a restored closeness, rebuilt more carefully on more honest ground. It may be something different, a connection that is real but reconfigured, that honors what existed without requiring you to return to a dynamic that was not working. It may be something you cannot predict until you are actually in the conversation and feeling what arises in the live, unmanaged space of two people who have something unfinished between them, finally speaking the truth of it. Whatever it becomes, let it be real, let it be honest. Let it be chosen by both of you from a place of genuine clarity, rather than from the emotional momentum of a reunion that feels so relieving that the important questions get deferred again. Because the important questions, if deferred again, will produce the same silence again. And you, Libra, with everything you have learned in the space of this one, with the clarity you have built, and the self-knowledge you have earned, and the very precise understanding you now have of what you need from a connection to make it worth your extraordinary capacity for love, you deserve better than the same silence twice. You deserve the conversation that was always supposed to happen, the one that the silence was standing in for because neither of you had found your way to it yet, the one that, if it happens with the honesty it requires, has the potential to transform what existed between you into something neither of you has experienced before, something that has the depth of shared history and the clarity of hard-won truth and the genuine mutual, this time we actually know what we are doing, choosing of each other. That conversation is forming in the space between you and this person, in the gap that has your outline, in the reckoning they are sitting with, in the direction they are slowly, haltingly, with considerable internal effort and more than a little fear, beginning to turn. Something is assembling. Something that began as a silence and is becoming very gradually and then all at once a readiness to speak. And you, Libra, with your extraordinary ability to hold complexity, to meet people where they are, to bring both your warmth and your truth into the same conversation without losing either. You are more ready for that conversation than you realize, more ready than the carefulness of your withdrawal might suggest, more ready than the self-protective distance you have been maintaining would indicate, because you did not go silent because you stopped caring. You went silent because you care deeply, specifically in the full and particular way that Libra cares, and you needed the silence to protect what you care with from being further diminished by a dynamic that was not honoring it. The caring is intact. You know it is. In the quiet, honest place where you do not perform anything for anyone, where it is only you and the truth of your own experience, the caring is there. It has been there throughout the silence. It is part of what has made the silence so heavy to carry. And when this person returns, when the inch of door is offered and the question of what to do with it is finally live and real and requiring your active engagement, the caring is going to be part of your answer. Let it be. Not at the expense of your clarity or your boundaries or your hard-won understanding of what you deserve, but alongside those things. Because caring and clarity in a Libra who has truly arrived in themselves are not in conflict. They are the two hands that together hold something worth holding, something real, something chosen, something that finally this time has the full truth of both of you inside it. That is what is possible. That is what is forming. And it begins the moment you decide that the silence, which has served its purpose, has run its course.